Oh, hello, hello. Welcome to the Black Podcast. I'm so excited for our guest today. But before we start on that, we want to thank you for continuing your support. And we definitely look forward to the partnerships and collaborations that we have coming soon. So please make sure you are continuing to support us there. Look at what we're doing. And that you're sharing these videos. So whether you listen to it live or you go back and listen to it again, or you listening to it later, make sure you do your part in contributing to our community by supporting the Black Podcast, by sharing the video, sharing the content. But we want to thank you for supporting us over the last 2 years. We love you. We love you. We love you. But we do need you to share, share, share. We have a special guest that's on today. And, when we bring in these guests forward, we want to make sure that uh, we're not just taking this information in for ourselves, but we know that we're contributing and pushing it forward to others, whether it's through the youth, your family, your friends, just your circle of people that you have on Facebook, because we really take a lot of time and put a lot of effort into finding these guests and locating these guests and connecting with these guests because we know that they align with what our community needs. We need to hear more stories and more journeys. So please make sure you do your part there. But we want to thank you for continuing to support us over the last 2 years.
Yeah, what she said. We've been here. We've been here for a hot 2 years. Hold up. Goodness gracious. 2 years and 2 years in a month. We're just past 2 years in a month now. We
Happy
had a lot of
anniversary.
guests, like a lot of guests, and I think all the way back to like our first guest. I think like maybe two or three of them we've been staying in touch with, but just so many have come and go. Every so often, I see one on our Instagram, and I'm like, "Hey, you were on my show." I forgot all about it. But yeah, so we're just out here. We wanted to touch lives all across the world, really, and we're able to touch so many more lives by having these guests on with various different expertise, levels of excellence all across the spectrum of professionalism, be it in the corporate space, be it in athletics, be it in entertainment. We've been able to have some of the best here on our podcast, and we like to do that so we can cover all bases because there's youth that are going to want to be and experience various different types of lives as they grow up, and we have the connections to bring them with those individuals. So, off that note, you guys know plenty enough about myself. I just look forward to hearing a lot more about our guests today. Whenever Dr. Hobson sends me over these individuals to find a title for them, throw together a flyer for them, I usually kind of picture in my mind what type of presentation they're going to come with. And I was looking at this fella here like this, as they say, this seemed like a pretty distinguished gentleman. So I look forward to hearing the goods that he has to drop for us. So take notes, guys, if you have the wherewithal to do so, because I really feel like we're about to get some value. So without further ado, Mr. Keith, how's it going?
How's it going there, Brian? How's it going, Dr. Hobson? Can you hear me?
We can hear you good, loud and clear. Thank
All
you
right.
so much for being a guest. Those glasses, you rocking them glasses. I like those. Like those. Like $1
Thank you.
million.
Thank you.
Like $1 million. Well, thank you for accepting the invite. I know that you have a lot going on and you're very busy in the space that you operate in. And so we definitely appreciate you taking the time to accept and be here. And just sharing your story with us. We know that, as we spoke earlier, the importance of sharing our story, especially in our community. We get to see the end result. We get to see the pictures. We get to see the smiling faces and the great times, but we don't get to hear enough about the challenges, the journey of what we have to go through in order to have this success or enable to be in the space that we're in. And so before we get started on what you're currently doing right now, we want to kind of go back and start from the very beginning of where you're from and the dynamics of your family, how you grew up.
Great. Well, Keith Wyche, and I'm originally from the great state of Ohio and Cleveland, Ohio, to be exact. I am the oldest of three. I have two younger sisters. And also maternally, I'm the oldest grandchild in the family. And that bears a lot to my upbringing because I was always expected to set the standard for all of my cousins and everything that came behind me. And there was a lot of pressure with that, but to whom much is given, much is required. And so, again, grew up in Cleveland, product of the Cleveland public school systems for most of my K through 12 education. Probably around the time I got to ninth grade, transferred to a predominantly white private school. Did well there and went on to college at Cleveland State University and got my master's degree from a local college called Baldwin Wallace College. So that's kind of the backstory.
Wow, wow. So, kind of when you grew up, like what were those conversations like? Were you ever involved any organizations? Was education something that your family really spoke about? Like what was that journey like, and then conversations that you had in your early childhood life?
Yeah, our family was a very spiritual family, which equated to we went to church a lot, and so I spent a lot of time in the early church. But when it came to education and family philosophies, education was really poured into us as a must-have. It was not if you were going to go to college; it was
Mm.
where and what were you going to study. And what I found is when you have expectations set for you, you tend to live up to those expectations, right? And so, when I came time to look at colleges, it wasn't again if, it was when. Um, my parents really leaned in. I mean, my mother was, I give her so much credit. She had the foresight to every summer while she let me play baseball and basketball, I had to go to the local library and be in the book reading club because she wanted me to really, stay current and to remain relevant. And those are things that have really carried me the rest of my life as being a lifelong learner, intellectual curiosity. um, we were, I would say poor. My mother hates when I say that, but looking back, we were on the poor side, but we never knew it. She made sure she exposed us to everything from opera to theaters to
Mm.
plays, uh, because her thing was if you could see it, you could be it. And so we grew up in that kind of close knit family. I'm 5 and 8 years older than my siblings, and so to some degree uh, my younger sister, her experience is a little different than mine, but that was really the atmosphere. Love, acceptance. We lived near cousins, and so we had all that going on. But that was kind of what the upbringing was like, just kind of philosophically.
Wow. So when we go in transition from that space to now you're getting up to college, well, before then, your high school, like those educators, were there anybody, like, was there anyone during that time? Because a lot of us had coaches, it might not have been a teacher, but it was a coach. Like I grew up in being, an athlete. I was in athletics my entire life. So a lot of people now who are my mentors were my coaches, and so they just followed me throughout my whole life and taught me through certain things and stuff like that. So I didn't remember a whole lot of my teachers, but I knew my coaches, and a lot of my coaches were the people that helped to influence. Like, so when I wasn't at home, that was my other place where I had those conversations. So I want you to speak on just uh, those that were in your life in that space in education as far as secondary, and then what was that transition like for you when you went to college? Did you already know what you wanted to do? Like, what was that space and transition for you?
Yeah, Dr. Hobson, you bring a very valid point because I have two high school experiences that are at polar opposites. And so I played basketball for my school, Trinity High School, and I had a coach who, was very supportive. And I laughed because I stopped growing after freshman year. And so freshman year, I'm one of the taller guys. By junior year, I'm one of the smaller guys. And he
Mm.
kept saying, hey, you're still good. You're still a player. Now you're a guard. You're no longer a forward, but you still add value. It's very, very supportive. Conversely, though, I had a guidance counselor, and this thing stuck with me for many years, who, when it came time for colleges to come recruit, told me not to go because I wasn't college material in his mind. And so imagine you're 15 years old, 16 years old, one of only two black boys in the whole class, uh, my graduating class, and having your guidance counselor say you're not college material. The challenge with that is that the same sun that melts ice hardens clay. So he says that to me, and
Hmm.
I'm the type of person, when you tell me what I can't do, I will go out of my way to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
There are others, when you tell them that, they believe it.
Hmm.
And so, that for me was a lot of negative motivation that I used positively to say, I will show you, right?
Hmm.
And multiple degrees later, I'm here. And so that was a lot of my college, my high school experience, kind of in two extremities, right?
Hmm.
I went to school in a predominantly white neighborhood. It was my first time being around folks who didn't look like me. And I had to
Hmm.
very quickly learn to be somewhat bilingual, because the way I had to speak, behave, and act at this high school was totally different than the way I would have to behave in the hood. And so when I
Yeah.
went back home,
Change.
I'd be Steve Urkel when I got back home, because and so I had to flip that and become Stefan Urkel. But the fact of the matter was, it was really a life lesson,
Yeah.
because early on I had to learn how to exist in a majority world.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. And I'll let Brian go next, but when we talk about education, I remember, education has changed so much, and it's unfortunate because that's supposed to be the space, that safe place, right? And so you have a lot of people who, yes, they have these degrees and they're in these positions, um, but are they doing justice to our students? Do they true? Are we just collecting the check? I mean, some coaches are the same way, continues to use and use and use these athletes. My study was on African American men's and the effects of athletics on their educational plans. Are we only just coaching, or are we teaching? Because we have to do both, right? And so we've seen this
Absolutely.
cycle of, the reality is majority of our young black men and women, but men who participate in athletics they're not there for leisure, they're not there for fun. They're there because it is a way out for them. It's a way of releasing how they feeling or their situation, or they feel like that's the only opportunity or way to get to college, was a vehicle for that. And so when we don't acknowledge that space for those athletes, for those students, then they make, because they all don't have the same willpower and strength like you and I or Brian, where it's like, oh, you said I can't do something? I'm about to show you. Like you said earlier, most of them are like, well, if it's coming from my guidance counselor, I mean, she knows what's best for me, right? If it's coming from my coach, he knows what's best for me. So you find that some of those students do buy into, especially nowadays, they buy into what someone tells them. They don't have that strength. And so that's why it's so imperative that people like you and I and Brian, we create those spaces for those students or those people who don't have the strength on their own to say, oh, you can't do it. But if they hear more stories and they say, well, Dr. Hobson, man, she got a doctorate degree, but I remember her saying that she struggled in reading. I remember, that this one grew up in this type of home, but now he's the over the what? Over corporate America? Or, so when we tell more stories and we place ourselves in position to be vulnerable and allow the youth and even people that are not in youth, right? We feel like sometimes for some of us it's like, oh, it's too late, right? I'm getting older now, and we've been taught for so long to fake it till you make it. And so for so long, so many people have been faking, right? And they never get an opportunity to really expand on who they are and what their gifts are. And so it matters that people like you and I are continuing to speak up and tell our story, because some people don't have the strength on their own to go to the next level like you did, or like I did, or Brian. So thank you for sharing that, because I believe that people may feel like, I was telling a student not too long yesterday, don't allow people to place you in a box. You know, And there was a guy, Chris, that I met through Brian a while back. I remember telling him all my gifts and talents. I said, well, I love speaking, but I love working out, but I love doing this. I got to pick something. He said, why do you have to pick? Why do you have
We're
to?
multifaceted, right? You
Yeah.
know,
So, well, who told you that, right? And so we do allow people to place us in those boxes. So I really appreciate you continuing to move in that purpose, and it could be just the faith driven behind it, where you understanding who you are and whose you are. It could just be something that we were born with, because it definitely is a gift when you can say, you know what, I'm about to show you, because I'm very competitive in my life. And it always came from athletics. But I want you to speak on just having that conversation in the back of your head of your guidance counselor saying one thing. Now you're transitioning into college. You're there. Are you already set? You know what you want. How was that space as you transition that journey of college for you? Did you know exactly what you wanted to do, and what was that like for you?
yeah, it was a situation where I went into college thinking, okay, I'm going to play basketball. I knew early enough, I was self-aware enough to know that, you know, the 5'11" guards, you weren't going to make it into the NBA. But, you know, I wanted to leverage that experience. And as fate would have it, uh, didn't last on the basketball team. And so I had to pivot, right? And so I pivoted from basketball to being editor of the Black student newspaper at Cleveland State. It's called The Vindicator. And what it was really there is I found my voice and my ability to tell stories and share stories and to educate and inform. And so, you know, while I didn't go in knowing that, I came out knowing whatever I do for my life's journey, it has to be about sharing, uplifting others, and telling and teaching. I want to go back to something you said when you talk about we need to tell our stories. I agree with you 1,000%. But I also say we need to be more transparent in those stories. And what I mean, Dr. Hobson, is, you know, you can look at you or I now and see success, what have you. But before there was success, there was struggle, right? You know, I can't tell you how many times, you know, I kind of tripped, you know, during my corporate career, mistakes. And people need to see that, because absent of the struggle, they think that it's all a bed of roses and, you know, you just exceed, exceed, exceed. But you have to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, you know, here's where I dropped the ball. Guess what? I graduated college with only a 2.8 GPA. You know, when everybody else was graduating and their parents were saying, you know, great, my kid was summa cum laude, magna cum laude. My grandmother said, Lordy, Lordy, he graduated, right? Uh, and so we need to tell the whole story, so, because absent of that, people feel they can't do it.
Absolutely, absolutely, Brian.
Yeah, it, I look at the different areas, the different spaces that you covered. A lot of students maybe
Do we lose Brian?
I remember he had a story of when he dropped out of college, and he talked
Mm.
about that journey, or he was on academic probation. I think I'll let him tell a story, but academic probation, and I know that he had went through that transition of, finding he's being from Mississippi and having those type of limitations on him. But I'm assuming that's kind of the story he was going to speak on, just being in that space of academics and probation and everything like that. You, Brian, you back?
yeah, accidentally escaped out of the window. But yes, just listening to some of the things that you made reference through going through as far as being in athletics. I'm probably not gonna make it to the league in this, but I'm gonna enjoy it while I can. Like there's so many youth that don't really take that logical approach, and they don't really prepare themselves to be more well-rounded to actually make it to that next level. So I look at myself. I was a four-sport athlete in high school, and I knew I wasn't going to go to the NBA or to the NFL, but I felt like I could possibly at least make it to college. But I ended up trying out for my my university's team after turning down a JUCO offer. And no, I'm going straight D1, and that didn't work. So thankfully, I did have good grades, or I had good grades going into college. But as Dr. Hobson was just mentioning, um, I was now only a student. And since I was 4 years old, I was a student athlete. So just being a student didn't make sense to me. So I spent all my time in the rec center playing basketball and working out. And that GPA dropped. Come out of high school, 3.89 GPA. I dropped down to a 1.67. And after semester after semester of probation, they finally gave me the boot. So I mentioned that because a lot of times people will see someone like yourself and just imagine the road was simply paved. He probably just skated right on through and was just a success. And they say the same and expect or assume the same about myself. 3 different degrees, 2 years of a doctoral degree, and out here speaking all over the place. Man, he must just had it going on. I'm a college flunky. I got kicked out of college. So I use parts of that story to be able to reach different youth throughout, a lot of the work that I do. So if you don't mind, just give us an example of you being able to tap back into the fact that, you know what, I had to be dualistic. I had to code switch and learn how to fit into multiple spaces. How you use that, or an example of when you've had to use that with one of the students that you've worked with, and how that went over. Because I know with myself, a lot of times they're shocked. And then once they see that vulnerability of you letting them know, it's like they blossom because they feel, you know what, I got somebody I can relate to now. And they actually see something in me. So if you have a story along those lines, I feel like you've got to with the background you have.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. And rather than share a story, I'll share. Quite often, I'm asked to go, speak at HBCUs or other majority colleges, and the question always is, "Hey, Keith, if you could go back to your 19, 20-year-old self, what advice would you give? What would you say?" And so I've come up with what I call the 5 Fs. The first thing I would say, if you're going to be successful, you got to have faith. First of all, faith in yourself, because there will be many people who will doubt you and tell you what you can't be, what you shouldn't be, what you aren't capable of, and you've got to believe in yourself. But also for me, faith in a higher power. That higher power is my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But that's going to be important because life will test your faith. Secondly, fortitude, and it's a second cousin to faith, and that just says you will get knocked down. You've got to learn to get back up. It's not about falling down. We all fall down, but you've got to be able to get back up and not let that one trip up keep you down. But the third thing is fearlessness. Too often, Brian, Dr. Hobson, we let fear keep us from doing or trying things, or keep us from going after things that well, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. But you've got to fight through that fearlessness. One of my favorites is focus. I'm a member of a certain fraternal order. And when I was in college, I will tell you that we partied like nobody else. The difference is because of focus, I knew when to leave the party. I knew when, hey, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I know I got this exam tomorrow. Let me shut it down. Hey, it's Saturday night. The bros are out. And yes, I'm Omega Sci-Fi Incorporated. But, hey, let's take it home. So you got to be focused. The same light, if you put it in a beam, becomes a laser beam, can cut steel, dispersed, it gives light. But the fact is, you got to be focused. And too often when you're young, you're doing everything. And then the last thing, and this goes back to my grandmother, is fellowship. Birds of the feather flock together. I don't care what you say. And so I've always been mindful of the people I had around me to encourage me. To this day, if I find I'm the smartest person in the room, I got to go to another room because I can't be the smartest person in that room. And then all of that really creates that family of people who encourage you, who support you, who believe in you. And so those are the 5 things that I try and really pour into young people, because it's not about if, it's about when life kind of, jumps up and smacks you in the head. It will happen. To talk about code switching for just a minute, I had a very interesting conversation in Atlanta last week with some HBCU students, and we talked about generational differences. I'm a baby boomer. I was taught to conform. I was taught to basically assimilate. Uh, Fortunately, this generation of folks are standing on their own too, and are really saying, "Hey, here's who I am. You have to accept all that I bring to the table, not just the parts of me you like."
Yeah, that's highly important. Dr. Hobson mentioned the guy Chris that she met through me. Well, not really through me, through a program that both of us were part of. But he and we work very closely together right now. Very successful businessman. Matter of fact, I got to leave in a few hours to head to the airport to go down to a meeting in Miami that they're going to need me with. But he's one of those guys, when you see him on the street, you'll never think he's worth as much as he's worth, because he wears his baseball cap, t-shirt, some jeans, and a pair of Jordans. Like, that's his outfit. Everywhere you see him, that's what he's wearing. But it's his own brand shirt. He's got his own, branded clothing and such. And he had to go to Boston this morning for a meeting, some type of investment group that he's part of. And it wasn't anything new to me, but he mentioned the reaction that he got from some of the guys that are part of the investment group, because he wears his same fit almost everywhere. You will almost never see him in a suit and tie. That's his brand, and he's got the track record. He's had the success to allow him to do that in most spaces that he goes into. But one of the things that so many of us, especially from some of our more hood communities and such, we got to realize you got to make your mark first. Like, you have to go into a space and make your value evident before you can lean into being more of your casual self. And it's just there's so many of us that, there's certain times in life where we have to assimilate, but it's far too often that we don't come back to who we really are. So I think that's just so important to let these young men know is, look, you have got to keep who you are at heart, but understand how to walk into certain rooms to get certain attention, to garner certain respect. And then they will allow you to be, not that they have to allow you, but they'll see that you deserve to be who you are. And it's one of the things that, I take a lot of pride in. I studied a lot of different cultures while I was coming through school. So one of my bachelor's degrees is in Spanish. I spent time in Bolivia, spent time in Costa Rica. I'm looking to go to Spain as soon as possible. Bilingual. So I work with a lot of the Hispanic community. And one of the things that I really pour into a lot of the youth is, learning that second language, because for one, it's going to get you more opportunity. For two, it's going to open up so many more doors of relationships. So just to be in a store, and I give a quick example. I was at Walmart about a week or so ago, and I was in the Mexican aisle, and I was looking for some stuff to make some burritos. And this lady, she bumped into me, and I said, "Discúlpame." And she said, hablas español. She was so excited that someone could actually speak, that didn't look like her, could speak her language. And she gave me her business card. I clean houses and speaking all in Spanish. I'm like, slow down. Más despacio, por favor. But just being able to diversify yourself, not only with a language, but in anything in life, I think is just so important for us to pour that into that next generation. So coming from your diversity and your background, so having some sports and the background, like myself, left in high school, but knowing that there's value that you can give to the world in another area. What are some of those things, or how do you keep that semblance of balance in your life? Like, do you still bring some of those leisurely things to be part of your self-care, and how do you pour that into some of the student population?
Yeah, I do believe that we do need to show up and show out, so to speak, on who we are. And so I'm ghetto does good. I'll be honest with you. And so I'm not that pretentious brother. People sometimes will see my bio and say, "Oh, he's this, he's that." No, I'm just that bruh, right? I'm gonna keep it real. I'm gonna keep it honest. And what I try and do is just relate. One of the reasons I'm such a voracious reader and as someone who's trying to stay intellectually curious is that's how I learn and that's how I share. I used to be in sales for IBM years and years ago. One of the things they taught us was when you go into an office, look around the office. Do you see pictures of college? What college were they went to? Do you see sports, golf, whatever? And then you can relate to them on a more human level, a more formal level. Because at the end of the day, it's about people. Nobody gets to the top of any field or any profession without somebody who's already on the other side of that glass ceiling, so to speak, pulling you through. And so, stay current to remain relevant. Too often for many of us, the last book we've ever read was the last book we were required to read. Be that high school, college, what have you. But I will tell you, in my career, being well read is really something that's helped me in some of these circles. And again, I'm not talking about reading books on physics or those type, but just something that makes sure that you are conversant with what's going on because you want to relate to every level. And too often, and I'll even use me as an example. Early on out of college, I didn't spend time building relationships with people who didn't look like me. I didn't spend time with others, and I grew to realize that there are people who don't always look like you that are willing to help you. Most of the sponsors I've had in my life and mentors didn't look like me, but we were always able to relate. And so, I always tell folks, hey, make sure that you're staying current to remain relevant. Because to your earlier point, when you get to the point where you bring so much value to a job or to an institution, if you bring that much value, they don't care as much what you look like or what you wear. When I was at IBM, there was an unwritten rule, particularly for Black men, no facial hair, right? I'm going back to the 80s, but the reality of it is once you reach a certain level of competence that you've demonstrated in your value, that's what people lock in on, not so much what you look like.
Wow. Wow. I'm glad you said a couple of things. And I was just having this conversation, and then I had to learn myself. So, uh, I had a track reunion, and for my college, and so I debated for a while whether or not I was going to go into this reunion or not because I really never connected with them. Right? I just ran track in college, got the scholarship, got the degree, left, did my own thing. And I say all that to say is when I walked into the building, to see my teammates turn around and start crying, right? I went to New Mexico State University, so it wasn't too many Black people there, but the ones that were there, we all played sports, and so um, they were so emotional, and I'm like this is a lot. And so what I realized is that I, to this day, don't remember anything about college beside going to class, passing, running track, and that's it. No relationships, don't remember. I mean, my teammates were coming to me and saying, remember that time you were talking to me about self-love and self-respect? And I'm like, no, and so when you kept saying, stay relevant, it just, the way that it transformed to me is being very present. Be present, like where you're at, right? Embrace where you're at. And it wasn't until I started to see my grieving counselor when my brother passed was that I couldn't remember anything that's happened in my life because I was so used to, you check a box, you move on. You check a box, you move on. You check a box, you move on. And so those relationships were important to me, but I just didn't remember them because it was like they were there for that season, for that reason, and I'm on something else. And so when you talk about being relevant, it's so important to why you're in that space to be present because those are all relationships that you may have to tap into later on. And when we're constantly just going through the motion or just checking a box or listening to what other people are saying, or doing what's trendy. We're going to always find ourselves to be away from irrelevance because we're just searching for that next thing. And when you know who you are and what space you're supposed to operate in, it helps to make that journey more relevant because you will be connected to the right people. When you do connect those F's and your faith, your focus, um, he will align those people in your life that are according to the purpose and plan that he has for you. But
Amen.
times we don't put ourselves in those positions. We say we want them, but what are we doing to put ourselves in those positions? Are we going to rooms and sitting in rooms and sitting at tables and speaking to people that are outside of who we're used to seeing? It may be that person that you got to get out of your comfort zone to say, hey, how you doing? What I've learned as a woman, to kind of take the pressure off other women feeling intimidated or threatened, I would go and say, oh, I love your shoes, because I knew that how we feel as women about shoes. So now that was an opportunity for them to say, well, you know what? I love your shirt. And now I can build a relationship with those people and make those connections. So staying relevant, but also making sure that you're very present, making sure that you are um, that you're expanding your circle, like you said, of people, because you may have to. And sometimes in our, especially in Black businesses or just what we do, a lot of our connections come from other people. And if you're not able to get in those rooms because you're not relatable or approachable, or you're not dressed, I tell my students, dress how you want to be addressed. So if you're a business major, you should look like your business. Just because you're in college and it's a 9 o'clock a.m., you don't know who's walking on these campuses. You don't know who your professors are. And so we have to have those conversations, and we need to remind ourselves to be relevant, but to also be very present. I want you to talk about, with all these tools that you said, you would give your 19-year-old self. Those are obviously things that you still do to yourself, for yourself now as a leader, right? Because you're going to have people who are there just to check the box. You are going to have people especially in corporate America, where it's like, we're not worried about feelings right now. We're not worried about diversity. We're not, we have it because we have to have it, but is it really important to them? So what are those spaces like for you when you are like, you are very relevant, you're living in your truth, you know who you are, you know the purpose and plan for your life, and what you're doing right now on this level, how are you able to still be in those rooms and stay relevant, and to make sure that what you know to be the truth is actually operating on the space that it should be, because it's people like you that are going to make a difference for those who are looking from the outside. So what do you do in those rooms, in those spaces? How do you apply those to where you're at now?
Yeah, and to me, it's all about your values, right? And if I were to give you my five values, it would be respect for everyone, love, purpose. I'm real big on purpose, fairness and equity. And in the last few years, I picked up just self care or wellness. But because of my purpose and my passion, I have to use my voice in those rooms. I've seen too much. I've been through too much. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, because wherever you are, you can be a leader, you can be a mentor, you can help someone else, is to take those lessons that we've learned, good and bad, and pour it into those who are not only with us, but those who are coming behind us. And you get to a point, and maybe it's courage, maybe it's faith, where you have to speak truth to power, whether they like to hear it or want to hear it or not. One of the things I really don't like, and I don't see it often, is we get a seat at that table and then we're scared to use our voice. If you're not going to use your voice, get the hell away from the table, right? We need people who are going to speak boldly, speak powerfully, speak professionally, but to share those messages. And so when I speak to corporations, when I consult, I give them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. How can you be about racial equity and you're not spending any of your supplier diversity or your supplier funds with diverse suppliers, right? How can you be all about diversity and inclusion when you aren't recruiting at HBCUs, or you go to the same college over and over to recruit? and just really trying to educate them. And I try, as much as I can to give them the benefit of the doubt, because what I have learned is for those who are sincere, if I take the time to educate them on how we got here, educate them on what it's like to look like you and I and function in this world, it then tends to create some empathy. That empathy tends to lead to then some level of allyship, but ultimately it needs to lead to compassion and action. And so, using your voice, be fact based when you speak. Uh, you know, do it lovingly, but you have to not be afraid to share those messages. And too often, people get in these rooms and we don't stand up for each other. We don't sponsor each other. We don't, right now I'm a big advocate for Black women in corporate America, not because I am one, I'm not, but I have two daughters who are, I have, two granddaughters. And I know the struggles that women in general and Black women in particular have to face in that arena. And you have to be able to speak up.
Absolutely. I was reading something not too long ago about Black women being the worst treated in, the workforce. And we do deal with a lot, um, and that's what I was saying before, is that's why it matters to be relevant, to be present, because we have to be able to tell those stories, like you said, and not just tell your story, but tell all of it, because you never know who's in that space. And I used to tell girls that all the time, like, oh, you got this, you look like you got, it's like, hey, there's struggles. There's people that's not going to take you serious. I had to go and get degrees and get all these letters behind my name and in front of my name and on the side of my name, because when you step into space and being a Black woman in athletics, the conversations changed. They don't want to speak on, how do you know about football players and what they need? A need is a need.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter who the need's coming from. It's a need. Change is change. So I think that when we start getting in those spaces, and that's why we join organizations, to have that sense of fellowship and people that you can tap into and bounce ideas from. And like you said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you don't want to be in that room. I'm the same way. I don't want to be in a room full of broke people. I don't, I don't want to know. I don't need the help on
Because
how
you,
to
you
be
will be
broke.
the next one.
I don't need help on how to be broke. So it's like we have to, put ourselves in those spaces or create that space. If the space is not available, then you create it. And so I thank you for doing that. So just talk about your leadership skills right now. What are you doing that that to help to make sure that you stay relevant in your leadership space? Like, what are some things, are you professional developments? Like, what are you doing to make sure that you're not only just speaking your truth, but it's like, I'm staying relevant? Because, like, what do those things look like? What are your
Sure.
regimens that you do?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think I told you I'm a very big reader, and so I'm always, reading some of the latest books. In fact, I'm reading one now. It's called "Demystifying Corporate America: A Real-World Guide to Navigating the Corporate Landscape Without Losing Your Personal Life, Your Mind, or Your Soul." So I'm a voracious reader. I also am part of organizations. I'm a member of the Executive Leadership Council. It's an organization of some of the highest-ranking Black and African American leaders in this country. And we meet quarterly because iron sharpens iron. And again, it's one of those things where you're learning. I'm actually a member of the National Association of Corporate Directors, and I have to be certified November 1st. I think I might take my certification test to be a corporate director. I will be serving again on a corporate board, be announced later this month. And so those are the things that again, I kind of use to help me stay on top of my game. And again, the circle of folks I run around with, I try and make sure that, again, Brian said Spanish, right, dude? I didn't get too much past, tu habla español, but, I'm realizing the benefit it would help in my career, in my leadership, if I were able to converse to my, Latinx associates, my Hispanic associates in their native tongue, right? It's so always learning, always listening. And listening is important. When I say listen, kind of a 360 type of thing, because you just the way you think you show up and the way you show up can be two totally different things. And so I've learned to, my family probably is the best at it, to look and get honest feedback from folks who love and care about me. hey, Keith, you need to do better in this area. Hey, I'll share a story with you. You talk about stories. Uh, I originally retired in 2013 when I was president of a company called Acme Markets. And so my plan was to take all of my kids on a vacation and all these things. They were adults at this point. But when I did that, they each shared with me a story of something I missed that was important to them in their childhood because I was out chasing that dollar. I was out on this business trip. And it really evolved into a great conversation because in my mind, I'm like, hey, you had the latest Jordans, you had all this stuff, you had all these opportunities. And they say, yeah, Dad, we appreciate all of that. And yeah, we took those Jordans, but we wanted to have more of you. And so even the folks who are more senior that I mentor, I even encourage them, hey, you can't get those years back. Your daughter is in high school or invest now because again, those are things that are going to be important. And so just always being in a continuous mode of listening and learning and evolving.
Man, I love so much of what you said. Like over the last
When he does this, when he
10
does
minutes.
that, he's about to go do. It's something that when he does that, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, so we're gonna rewind this a little bit. So we hear the notion it's not about what you know, it's about who you know in today's day. And when I'm working with my clients, I lean into them where it's more about who knows you. That's what's gonna get you to the table. But when you get to that table, it's about what you know. That's what's gonna keep you at the table. So many people will get that seat, but then they act like they don't know anything. They come in there and they act like they have to be politically correct. They have to, walk this. No, go in there and show out respectfully, professionally. Show your tail. And I'll tell you, when I came back from Miami to work on my master's degree in 2015, I made a bunch of enemies and I piqued the curiosity of a bunch of professionals at the same time. Whereas when we're introducing ourselves on orientation day, almost verbatim, every student, well, I came so I can study, mental health and anxiety. Hopefully I'll graduate, get my license and work for this agency. Hopefully I'll graduate, work for that agency. All these people, the cookie cutter, same thing. It's like, let me say what that person said. That sounds safe. When it came around to me, like straight up, I said, well, I didn't come here to just sit in the classroom and make good grades, hope to graduate and go work for someone. I came here to get active across campus, across the state, and across the nation so that once I do graduate, I'll be in a position to do exactly what I want to do, which is develop mentoring programs for the adolescent youth. I didn't know how that was going to work, but I threw it out there. You could feel the tension of other students, like, who is this brown noser over here? And you can see the professors like, we're going to have to keep an eye on him. And from the jump, I started getting pulled in on projects, pulled in on this project, on that project. Next thing you know, I'm in the media. I'm with the university developing social businesses. I'm in front of the governor presenting a business plan. Like, all of these things only happen if you show up. Don't just get there and say, okay, I got a seat, I'm good now. No, when you get there, let them know about your presence. Let them know about your presence, and slowly but surely, they're going to be happy to let you stay on the front and represent their organization. So I love that you mentioned that. It's just so profound, and so many people need to take that and run with it.
Yeah, and in fact, what people have to realize, again, because I've been able to matriculate from the classroom to the boardroom, one of the reasons they let you or want you at that table is for you to bring that unique perspective. And so for you to come there and not bring it does a disservice to everyone. The other thing is, they also look for you to validate. And so, if you're not bringing or identifying other Black and African-American professionals or highlighting them or hiring them or supporting them when their name comes up in a promotion succession planning meeting, if you don't speak up for them, they say, well, Keith didn't say anything, Brian didn't say anything, Dr. Hobson didn't say anything. This person must not be all that. And so again, your voice is important. Don't be, and I'm gonna go back on you. There was a book written years ago, The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Don't be the spook who sits by the door and just doesn't say anything. Just glad to be there. Again, to whom much is given, much is required. And I believe that. That's my mantra. Maybe it's because I was a baby boomer and I lived through the 60s civil rights movement and all that, but we've been through too much to get this far and not finish the journey.
Yes.
Wow.
Before we get ready to let you go, I want to say one more thing. You mentioned like going back for the others, like being that example, so on and so forth. And we have to, well, put it like this: it was a white man and a white woman that put me on game. Like they got opportunity after opportunity for me, but I showed up when they opened up that door for me. And it was this young fella, guy by the name of Reginald Virgil. Maybe he'll watch this, maybe he won't. But I remember he came to one of the rehearsals whenever we were doing our social business challenge. I was one of our main speakers, and when he was introducing me afterwards, and like just so on and so on after that specific occasion, he would always say, "I'm gonna be just like you, B. I'm gonna be just like you." Like, no, you're not gonna be like me. You're gonna be you, but the absolute best version of you. And we have taken completely different routes. Whereas he became the president of Mississippi chapter of Black Lives Matter. He went all over the nation discussing racism and all these different universities. But he is like that social justice type of guy. Whereas I'm the, yes, let's partner up, Mr. Social Justice guy, but I'm gonna develop a business that's gonna bring in the funding to help with this initiative. I'm gonna get in front of the people and talk to them strategically on how we can work together on this initiative instead of just protesting, so on and so forth. But he went out and just did so much, and he's still doing so much. Spoke at the nation's capital at the NASW conference a couple months back. All these awards. And he sent me a text with a picture of Student of the Year some months back, and I replied to him, "Am I supposed to be surprised? Like this was expected of you." So, I say that to say whenever we get into these roles and these positions, we got to always understand that somebody's watching us. So if we see them watching us, we got to pour into them and let them know, I'm nothing special. I'm nothing special. You can do this too. But you have to figure out what's inside you that you're meant to give to the world. Not what you see in me that you want to emulate. Emulate the leadership, emulate the tenacity, but what do you have to give to the world? And you go give it your all, you got my back, or I got your back. So just listening to you and some of the things you've done, some of the areas you've been in, I'm over here like I got to dig more into this fella here and learn a little bit more about what he's been a part of, so I can emulate a little bit of that, but do it in my lane. So I just appreciate the value you brought today, and I hope everyone else that's viewing can say the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brian, Dr. Hobson, I appreciate having you. You said something very profound, and that is that we all have our own unique race to run, right? And you can't be me, I can't be you. But you can be the best Brian, I can be the best Keith, and if we cheer each other on, we both cross the finish line, and that's what's important.
That's it. That's it.
That's definitely it. That is it. And thank you so much for telling your story. Thank you for being obedient. There were times that you could have gave up and that you could have threw in the towel, but you didn't. And it could be not only just for yourself, but we always have a sense of service. And so because you are a man of faith, we always have to serve. We're always in position. God puts us in position to serve. That's part of our purpose in our life. And so we serve, and you're serving by continuing to walk in that space, because I know that even on your level where you're at right now, you still have trials and tribulations and challenges that may come up, but because of you and your dedication and commitment to the purpose and plan of your life and your service, you're saving and helping other people. And so that is winning in my book. And I always talk about winning, and people think I'm speaking on tangibles, but I'm, every time you influence someone else, every time you can see someone else growing from that situation, even if it's one, and even for the ones that you don't see, you know, you've done your job. And so I just really appreciate you being you, and staying true to the race that was placed for you. Because like you said, if you stay in your lane and win, we can all win. We can all win in our lanes. We all can be winners. And so once we learn in our community to stop thinking that we all have to do the same thing and that it's a competition. I'm very competitive, but the competition is me. It's not you.
Absolutely.
And so I like hanging around winners. I want to win in my spiritual life. I want to win in my professional life. I want to win in my love life. I want to win in everything that I'm doing, whatever I feel winning is for me. But I want you to win in what you feel is winning for you. And I feel the same way about you in the space that you operate in, that's how you are. And so because you're winning, whether you're winning all the races in your own book, it's winning for us because we get to see um, the results. We get to benefit from the tables you are sitting at, the conversations you are having. So continue to be you. And I'm a red, so we got that special bond, and you and Brian got the bald head. So it's all working together here. But we are all family. And so we will continue to build on this relationship because it doesn't just stop when the show stops. This relationship will continue. And so just thank you for your obedience and being true to yourself and who you are. And we are so glad to have you on this show. And thank you again.
Well, thank you for the platform. Thank you. And I'm proud of all the work that you and Brian are doing these past 2 years and beyond to share these stories, to share these messages. We need it in our community, and we need people like the two of you making it happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to put you in the backstage very shortly, and we're going to close out. Oh, let them know where they can find you. Your LinkedIn.
You can find me by the best place is keithwyche.com. If you go to keithwyche.com, you can find everything Keith Wyche. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, but that's where you would go. And pleased to announce that my latest book, Diversity is Not Enough, was nominated for an NAACP Image Award this year. Lost to Tabitha Brown, but that's all right. I was in good company.
Yes, I was wondering, is that his book back there? Okay, so yes, I need to go to your website and get your book. I was about to say, are you, with all this knowledge, if you're not putting it in a book, I mean, come on. But so I'm so glad that you have that and what you're doing. I'm sure you got, yes, 4 of them. So please make sure that you go out and look at the website and purchase those books because all the knowledge that you've gathered, you've had to place what you know in these books. And so we need to know more. And so keithwells.com, you can find your books, your Instagram, everything, your LinkedIn, they can find everything about you there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're going to put you in the backstage real quick. Another amazing guest. Well, I'm not going to say anything, but please make sure you share these videos. You share this because, again, you just never know. We've only touched the surface of what he's doing. And so if you want to learn more and you want to continue to grow in the space that you're in, make sure that you go to the website and check him out. And then you can find more information about him on our website as well. If you need to go back and look at the show and and see, who you need to connect with within his circle of people. And then you can also look at what we're doing and what gifts that you have that you can contribute to what we're doing. Because it's like he was saying, it's about everybody winning their race. And so there is something inside of you that you're great at that we may need your service or that we do need from you. So please make sure that you also look at our website on what we're doing within HSBA and how you can contribute to that mission as well.
Yeah, buddy. So yeah, check us out and reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out. We got a newsletter coming out in a couple days, and it's going to be a little different. So I'm going to be able to see who's actually reading our newsletters and who's just sending it to, or just sending it to junk or whatever y'all doing. Anyways, definitely feel free to engage because there's power in numbers, and the more of us that link together, collaborate, partner up, so on and so forth, the more lives we can actually impact. So off of that note, keep an eye out. We will continue to bring you great guests with very remarkable backgrounds that are doing great things out here in the world. So keep an eye out on our Facebook, on LinkedIn. What else? YouTube, Twitch. I wonder how many people actually watch us on Twitch. But
I don't know.
we are here, guys, and we're not going anywhere anytime soon. So stay tuned. Make sure you share out the video if you found value and you know someone that can use the value as well. Don't hesitate to share it. And if you have any questions, comments, and suggestions, people you want us to interview, just feel free to reach out and we'll see what we can do. Put them in front of you all. Off that
Yep.
note, we out. See you guys the next
Thank
time.
you, thank you, thank you.